Hello, I'm June Baer, the Chair of the Town Celebrations Committee. Welcome to Lexington's 2020 Veterans Day celebration. We hope you enjoy this video honoring all veterans of military service and commemorating the signing of the armistice ending World War I on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918. The 11th hour. It is an expression that means at the last possible moment. It implies urgency, the need to act now before it's too late. So even if the armistice had not become effective at 11 a.m. on November 11th, there could be no more appropriate time to honor our nation's veterans than at the 11th hour of this day. When the country had an urgent need for action, our veterans are the ones who answered that call. To help us honor these brave women and men, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome Professor Sheila E. Widnall, who will serve as our keynote speaker and the master of ceremonies for our program. Professor of Aeronautics and researcher at MIT for many years, Professor Widnall served as Secretary of the Air Force during the Clinton administration between 1993 and 1997. She is the first woman to lead an entire branch of the military. Of her countless accomplishments during her 4 years as secretary, one I find personally interesting is that she flew every type of aircraft in the fleet. I would love to know her favorite. Indicative of the kind of leader she was, Professor Widnall is the only Air Force secretary to pose for her official portrait in a flight suit. Why? She wanted all the men and women who served in the Air Force to know that while she oversaw them, she was also one of them. Professor Widnall?
If you ask a veteran to name the life experiences that have literally changed the direction of her life, there is a good chance that military service will be at or near the top of that list. Why do you think that is? I believe that values are a big part of the answer. Although many civilian organizations have value statements, in most cases they are not as deeply shared by members as they are in the military. In the military, they are upfront and deeply held. They become a part of us, and they influence how we live our lives. Values like honor, courage, service, discipline, commitment, sacrifice, and duty. During my tenure as Secretary of the Air Force, I promoted a set of core values that were adopted throughout the Air Force: integrity, excellence in all we do, and service above self. These values have been instilled in every Air Force member since that time. It is one of my proudest accomplishments. Also, during my tenure, the Clinton administration wanted to increase the opportunities for women in the military, and I am proud that the Air Force led the way in this effort. Many women who were fully trained as test pilots succeeded in becoming combat pilots. Since then, women have made great strides, attaining the highest levels in military leadership ranks. I was the first woman to serve as Secretary of a military service. Since then, 3 more women have followed me as Air Force Secretary. There is much more to do, but we are moving in the right direction. And I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to encourage young women to give serious consideration to careers in the military. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. To begin our program, we want to offer a tribute to a veteran of that war whom we lost this past summer, someone the Colonial Times described as the remarkable Dan Fenn. Dan was a man who understood and lived the core values of service throughout his life. It is difficult to imagine that his many contributions to Lexington, the Boston area, and a country were accomplished by only one person. His good friends, Stephen Cole of the Town Celebrations Committee and Jim Shaw of the Colonial Times, have worked with Dan's family to prepare the following tribute.
A father, grandfather, neighbor, friend, and the quintessential example of what it means to be a good citizen. That is how we celebrate the life of Dan H. Fenn, who chose Lexington as his home and a place to raise his family. Dan was a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard College in the class of 1944. His studies were interrupted when he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Force, where he served in Italy during World War II as a warrant officer. He returned from the war and completed his studies. Dan settled in Lexington and in 1952 ran for a seat in the Massachusetts state legislature. While he came up short in the election, his commitment to public service never waned. He met Senator John Kennedy and his life would change. Inspired, Fenn joined Kennedy's presidential campaign in 1960, where he campaigned in several states throughout the country. Kennedy prevailed over Republican nominee Richard Nixon and invited Dan to join him at the White House as a staff assistant. There, he helped to create the modern-day Presidential Personnel Office. After Kennedy's assassination, President Johnson appointed Fenn to serve as the vice chairman of the United States Tariff Commission. Then, in 1971, Dan was selected as the first director of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum, where he oversaw the construction of the facility and worked with the Kennedy family to carefully build exhibits and programming that reflected the work of the late president. During this time, Dan taught at Harvard University, a position he would hold for 56 years. Here in Lexington, Dan's commitment to his community remained strong. He served as a member of town meeting for nearly 60 years, served on the Lexington School Committee, and as a member of the Board of Selectmen, which is now called the Lexington Select Board. He was a founding member of the Lexington Education Foundation. He served as co-chair of the Historic Districts Commission and spent over 30 years as a proud member of the Lexington Minutemen Company. He was also an active member of the First Parish Church. For his service, he has been awarded the Lexington Lions Club White Tricorn Hat Award, Lexington's most prestigious award, the Minuteman Cane Award, and in 2019 he was presented the prestigious Harvard Medal for his decades of service to the university. Time does not allow to adequately praise Dan's decades of service. However, what was most important to Dan was his family. Dan had 7 children, 14 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. That by itself would be a great legacy, but combine that with all he has done over his decades of service, and you have a legacy that will stand the test of time.
For the past 3 years, the Town's Celebrations Committee has worked with the Lexington High School Social Science Studies Department to have high school juniors prepare essays on various aspects of Veterans Day. First, the Town Celebrations Committee wants to give a very big thank you to the high school teacher, Michael Egbert, who is mainly responsible for this effort. This year, we received 14 essays. 2 of these essays have been selected for presentation at this program. The first essayist, Asher Bernstein, will introduce us to his grandfather, a Navy clarinet teacher, and discuss the crucial role that music has played in the military throughout the centuries, and how every military job is important and contributes to overall team success.
Inspiring determination through music. When you first think of a veteran, you might think of a person in camo with an AR-15 over their shoulder, or someone with a prosthetic leg. The military is not just fighting and killing people, but defending our country from threats. This takes a lot of people. Drill sergeants to turn civilians into soldiers, cooks to feed the soldiers, barbers to cut the hair of the trainees, even musicians. According to Veterans Coming Home, roughly 40% of those who joined the military never get deployed to a combat zone at all. When the majority of people think of the military, they think of the members who go into combat. There is an equal number who never see combat but do equally important work. When I was thinking of who to write about for this essay, I first thought of my grandfather, Jim, a naval clarinet teacher. My grandfather is a naval veteran. However, he is not what you might think of as a veteran. He never shot anyone, never held a gun, and never even stepped onto a naval ship, but he is still a veteran. When I proposed the idea of me writing about his time in the Navy to him, he brushed off the idea, saying, "It's hard to imagine how my military service deserves honoring." However, this is exactly the opposite. His hard work influenced many lives, allowing soldiers to perform their duties, grieving family members to come to terms with their pain, and to support musical tradition in the Navy. In 1952, in the middle of the Korean War, my grandfather was going to get drafted. But he found an alternative to getting shot at and shooting a weapon himself. He would give clarinet lessons to other musicians in the U.S. Naval School of Music. While this job may seem inconsequential, it is undoubtedly important. The primary job of music in the Navy is to boost morale. Music is a universal language that brings people together when words are not available. In World War II, William Millen, commonly known as Piper Bill, played his bagpipes under fire during D-Day in Normandy. He walked across the beach playing The Road to the Isles. One soldier, Tom Duncan, stated, "I shall never forget hearing the skirl of Bill Millen's pipes. It is hard to describe the impact it had. It gave us great lift and increased our determination." Duncan was able to continue to fight until reinforcements showed up. By having Millen play his bagpipes, he was able to show strength and determination and help allow the weary soldiers to continue to fight. Even fallen soldiers are honored by a bugle call that beckons us to remember patriots who have served our country with honor and valor. It is a most familiar call and one that moves us all who hear it. Throughout military history, music has impacted many lives, allowing soldiers to continue to fight when they don't want to, show respect for fallen soldiers, and even allow soldiers to have a good ending to their day. At the U.S. Naval School of Music, Jim taught not only the basics of musical mechanics to clarinet players, but also how to instill hope and confidence in others. He showed the musicians how to sympathize with families, how to boost morale by playing their instrument. The faculty band of the Naval School of Music, similar but separate to the U.S. Navy Band, performed in parades in Washington, D.C. to support civilian morale, and played in concerts for foreign ambassadors to assist the U.S. State Department. He remembers having to dodge the horses in parades. Just because you have not touched a gun or shot a gun does not mean that you are not a veteran. Every person who is a veteran has done their piece to protect their country. Whether it is commonly recognized or not, you have made our country safe and should be honored.
And speaking of music, we will now hear a recording of the Lexington High School Band playing the service songs. Veterans, you know what to do when your song is played. Our second essayist, Anna Maria Karaskowitz, describes the life of a family friend, Stanislaw Michalski, who was born on the day that Poland gained its independence and who fought with the Polish underground in World War II.
As dawn broke on November 11th, 1918, the sun just beginning to peep over the horizon, a historical agreement would be made. In the early breaking hours of the morning, an armistice was signed to end World War I, the day we would later come to know as Veterans Day. Simultaneously, after 123 years of occupation, the Central European country of Poland regained its independence. It is under the dark early morning sky of this day in history that our story begins. The day Stanisław Michalski, a family friend, was born. Throughout his life, Stanisław maintained with pride that he never had to live a day in subordinate Poland, and he dedicated his life to making sure it would stay that way. Stanisław grew up in a rural village in south-central Poland. From a young age, a deep sense of patriotism was instilled in him, raised with family traditions of fighting for Poland's independence. His father owned a small plot of land, though this did not yield much of an income, so the family lived in modest conditions. Despite their financial struggles, Stanisław's family, especially his mother, were adamant in ensuring him and his siblings a higher-level education. He excelled at school, graduating with honors, which gained him entry into the Warsaw Polytechnic's electrical engineering program. Then, on September 1st, 1939, the world turned upside down. Germany attacked Poland, followed 2 weeks later by an offense for the Russian army in the east. Stanisław joined the military, and not long after, he fought his first battle, the gruesome reality of which would remain ingrained in his memory. He served loyally with his unit throughout the campaign of 1939, and when Poland was occupied and its military dismantled, he joined the Polish underground. While in the underground, he finished an officer training program and was assigned to LETV, a branch of counterintelligence responsible for the underground safety. LETV was responsible for sabotage, intercepting arms manufactured in German factories and distributing them amongst underground members, and operations against German forces and their collaborators, as well as organizing officer training programs, like the one that Stanisław completed. He and his unit actively kept track of every move of the German forces, Gestapo, and Gendarmerie within their region. The war did not pass, however, without Stanisław experiencing an earth-shattering personal loss. In 1940, the underground state was betrayed and mass arrests of its members took place. His brother, Wojciech, also a member, would be captured by the German Gestapo as part of these arrests. At first, Wojciech hid from the forces as long as he could, but this endangered his family, so he eventually turned himself in. He died in captivity, never releasing any form of information. Stanisław would never see his brother again. After the Yalta Conference, Poland found itself in the Russian sphere of influence, with forced ideological, military, economic, and political dependency. Citizens who served throughout the war in the Polish underground were killed for their service, so Stanisław was forced to bury his wartime past. He refused to conform to the new reality, which cost him employment on many occasions, since he would not join the Communist Party as was required. He stood firm in his values and hopes for the independent Poland he'd fought so hard to protect. Eventually, he secured a position at the Polish Academy of Sciences, where he researched physics of the atmosphere and electrical discharges until he was 90 years old. During his time there, he witnessed the liberation of Poland from the Eastern Bloc and a free election in 1989. It was only then he was finally able to tell his story. His service was recognized by the Polish president, who received him at the presidential palace on Stanisław's 100th birthday and the centennial anniversary of Polish independence. I do not tell you his story simply to sing his praises, but to remind you of all the stories of countless men and women who risked their lives to protect ours, whose dedication, grit, and sacrifice give us the world we live in today. It is their stories that we remember and celebrate each and every Veterans Day.
As we recognize the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, my thoughts go back to the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II. As Secretary of the Air Force, at that time, it was my privilege to attend the 50th anniversary of the end of World War II, memorialized at the American Cemetery at Normandy. President Clinton was the principal attendee at this event, accompanied by the service secretaries and the chiefs of staff of all of the military services. It was awe-inspiring and painful to see the graves of those who perished during the Normandy invasion. Lexington lost 55 of its own during the Second World War. Many towns in Massachusetts have plaques commemorating the fallen from that war, placed where they can be seen by the general public. Not so Lexington. But as George Gumoda, chair of the Lexington Remembers World War II Committee, will tell us, this is about to change.
Thank you, Sheila. My name is George Gumoda, and I'm chair of the Lexington Remembers World War II Committee. World War II was the deadliest military conflict in history. A total of 70 to 85 million people perished, about 3% of the world population. The United States entered the war 2 years after it began, but for a country of 131 million at that time, we suffered a loss of nearly 500,000 men and women. Lexington, a town of some 6,000 people, in the 1940s sent 1,460 men and women to help win the war. Sadly, 55 did not return home. One of our committee's top priorities was to establish a public honor roll for those who made the ultimate sacrifice during World War II. This is in the form of a plaque honoring the fallen to stand next to the World War I fallen at Cary Hall. The list of the fallen was difficult to assemble. We started with several lists, some found in churches, Cary Library, the high school, VFW post, as well as Lexington Selectmen minutes from the 1940s. We also used the list of the Lexingtonians who lived in Lexington and joined the military services from the DoD archives. From all those lists, we compiled a list of 55. The names of these heroes will be inscribed in a memorial plaque and will hang at Cary Hall for all to see. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 has set back our timetable to accomplish this task. As businesses start to open and artisans can get back to work, we will have a formal installation and properly honor the 55 World War II fallen. Until that time, we have a mock-up of a plaque that lists the 55 fallen. We do have a funding for this effort, and I want to acknowledge and thank the Lexington Rotary Club, Lions Club, and the Community Endowment Fund for their support. We also want to thank the Select Board for their enthusiastic and unanimous endorsement for this project. Thank you.
Thank you, George. And thank you to the Town Celebrations Committee for inviting me to participate in your program. I want to leave you with a recommendation to view the wonderful website created by the Lexington Remembers World War II Committee, which is full of historical treasures from that period. The following are excerpts from the interview with some of our World War II veterans.
In 1942, I went back to college as a beginning junior. I'd had my 18th birthday in 1942, and I was sitting in September 42 in a classroom taking notes in a course in psychology. And all of a sudden it came over me. I said, you can't do this. There's a war going on in Europe. There's the Nazis. They've got to be stopped. You cannot sit here day after day taking notes in some damn course in psychology. So I waited till the class ended. I got up, I walked to Harvard Square, I walked into the subway, I went to Park Street, where I knew there was a recruiting station, and I joined the Army, just like that. And fortunately, the Army did what it never did before or since, I guess. It put me in the right place.
I'll tell you one thing about NSA. We were fresh young ensigns, my roommate and I, and these cute Marine guards would greet us every morning with, "Good morning, Admiral." So we instinctively said, "Good morning." Well, years later, I was getting on the elevator at John Hancock, where I worked, and the elevator operator said, "Good morning, Admiral." And instinctively I said, "Good morning." But so did this deep male voice behind me. And I turned around, and it was the Admiral of the 1st Naval District. He saw nothing amusing in this.
I must say that the unit to which I was assigned had about 15 of us, I think, originally. And we were trained by the elder soldiers who had survived. And they were wonderful. They taught us how to listen for shells. We could tell when the shells were coming in, when they were going over us, when they were going out. We learned the skills of battle really from our buddies.
Right.
Not from anything that we had been taught anywhere else. And it was, I think we all feel that we owe our lives to that camaraderie.
Why did you want to fly? Adventure, romance, I don't know. It was the... Off we go into the wild blue yonder. Right, just sort of that. You know, when you're 19 or 18 or 19 years old, war, it's a time that they get young men into the war because they don't know what they're doing anyway. And nobody thinks they can really get hurt. Others might, but you're not going to get hurt. And so I think war is fought by young men because they don't know any better. Lives lost, when you think of the property destroyed and the beautiful places ravaged and the damage to great works of art, when you think of the cost, when you think of the refugees, I've often thought, we keep talking about these people who gave their lives. Sam, they didn't give their lives. Their lives were taken from them. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. Our generation has really accomplished a lot, but there's an awful lot that we haven't accomplished, and maybe the top of my list of things that our generation failed to accomplish was to change the paradigm so that people who have the power said, no, we're not going to do this war thing. We can figure out another way of dealing with this problem.
I miss you. You'll never know just how much I care. And if I tried, I still couldn't hide my love for you. You ought to know told you so 1,000,000 or more times. There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover tomorrow. Just you wait and see. There'll be love and laughter and peace ever after tomorrow, when the world is free. When the lights go